I mean, before Fellini, when he was a filmmaker, the camera was huge and the brain was huge. Now the camera becomes small and the brain is disappeared. Hi, Declan.
Boss, so good to see you again.
I miss you a lot.
Long time, me too.
You know, guys, this is my man. This is my friend. This is Declan Walsh. He is a great journalist and he is covering the situation in Sudan. He is a winner of Pulitzer. This is a very special
Thank
award.
you very much.
This
Yeah,
is a
last
dream for, we're going to hear about it and going to tell us about Sudan, going to tell us about Egypt, about the future, about the hope. So good to see you.
And a haircut too.
I know! He went to cut his hair because we talked, we had Arabic coffee and and we are now in Nairobi and maybe next haircut it will be in Iraq. We don't know.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Inshallah. He loves Arabic food. What is your favorite dish?
Full.
Food. By the way,
I'm a peasant.
I know, but
I'm a simple man.
I know. That's great.
Full tamia.
And see what I wear for you, special t-shirt.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. I love it. That's a great message, man.
No wars. We don't need wars.
Nobody can disagree with that. Or can they? I don't know.
Rich man, big politician, they don't want. They want wars. They want to make more money and more money. How much money they want, these people?
As much as they can get.
Yeah?
One thing you realize about rich people is, they didn't get rich by spending their money.
Declan, I miss you a lot, and but I never asked you all these haircuts I gave you on the past. He is, by the way, in general, people don't choose me. I choose my clients. Declan, I choose him to be my client, and I love him. I love his work. I read all his articles. He's like a cinematographer when you read his articles. I never asked you these questions. What do you know about barbers? What do you know about with them? What do you want to say?
I am shockingly ignorant about barbers. I rely on you to educate me about. I have no yes. Well,
but what do you think about them? What they say in Ireland about barbers?
Well, I'll tell you a story. I mean, when I was growing up, there was one guy in our town who cut the hair of all the boys. His name was Kieran O'Rourke, and people would queue up to get their hair cut by this one guy. And partly you realize the success of a barber is whether he can cut your hair, but it's also because people like the experience. They like the chat, they
conversation,
like the conversation. He had a nice salon. Well, first they talk about the weather, because that is the number one topic of conversation in Ireland. But after that, they'll talk about politics, and it just depends how comfortable you are,
Right. Tell me about you. How long you're a journalist?
Well, I'm a foreign correspondent. I work for the New York Times. I've been based here in Kenya for the last 5 years, just over 5 years.
Okay.
With my family, and a lot of my, prior to this, it's my second time living in Kenya. Okay. I lived here for 5 years at the start of my career as well, when I was a struggling freelancer, also traveling around Africa. And in between, I lived in Pakistan and Afghanistan for almost 10 years. And then I was in London a little bit, and I was in Egypt for 5 years under President Sisi, and now back in Nairobi. So since I've come back here, my work has really focused a lot on certainly the last 2-3 years on the war in Sudan. Sudan's a country that I've been visiting on and off for almost a quarter century now. It was one of the first stories I did as a foreign correspondent, was a trip I made to Sudan from here in Kenya, actually. And since then I've been going back and forth, and I have a pretty strong connection to the country. My wife is from Sudan.
Is that why you cover the situation in Sudan, because you're white Sudanese? Or you feel you are responsible for your kids because they are half Sudanese?
Honestly, that's certainly a factor, but honestly, I think, I probably would have been as engaged with the story even if I didn't have that connection, I think, because, it's a country that I've been engaging with myself for such a long time, and I was lucky enough that I was there. I've been there, at some of the most important times over the last years, particularly during the revolution in 2019, when Omar al-Bashir, who had ruled Sudan for almost 3 decades, was overthrown following these popular protests. And that was, this incredible moment of hope for Sudanese that, here was this country that was going to, cast off this really troublesome history that it had and, become a democratic, hopeful place, especially for so many amazing, bright, young Sudanese people who I knew. So that was, that was this really euphoric moment that I lived. And I think for me, it probably had a special resonance at that time because when I covered that, I was actually based in Egypt and I had spent 4 years at that point, I guess, covering Egypt under President Sisi. And, you'll remember that President Sisi is this leader who came to power after the Arab Spring. And the Arab Spring was this moment of incredible hope in Egypt. And it turned, when I was there, it had really turned very sour. And, suddenly people even were starting to regret that the revolution had happened because, they felt that things were actually worse after the revolution than before. I think that's a complicated question because revolutions often have a bad aftermath and then eventually turn good. So I don't think Egypt's story is done yet. But at the period that I was there anyway, there was a lot of repression.
Tell me about the Pulitzer. Congratulations for this special award.
Oh, thanks for our coverage of the war in Sudan. Yeah, so we, like I said, I've had this connection to Sudan going back many years, and for the war started in 23. And for the first year, the war just couldn't get into the country at all. Neither of the two main warring sides were willing to let journalists come in. It was extremely volatile and dangerous, but just simply couldn't get a visa. And eventually in, I think, March of 2024, with the photographer Ivor Prickett, we got into Sudan and we managed to get to Khartoum and, do a report on the battle for the city as it was taking place then. And I followed that later in 2024 with a series of articles, one of them about the gold trade and how that was financing the war, another one about the foreign powers that were supporting different sides in the war and fueling it, but really tightly focused on the role of the United Arab Emirates, which it emerged had become this huge, very significant backer for the Rapid Support Forces, the paramilitary group that's fighting in the war. So we did a series of stories like that, and then also did work with colleagues in the Visual Investigations Department in the New York Times, pulling apart, analyzing videos from the battlefield, often showing atrocities to see what these videos could tell us about who was responsible for the killings or who was responsible for commanding the troops that were doing the killings. And so there were some very talented colleagues at the Times who worked on that, and I helped them out. And then there was a colleague from the New York Times Magazine who went to the Nuba Mountains, did a report from there. So all of this reporting was put together in one effort, and then it was rewarded with the Pulitzer Prize for international reporting last year, which was great.
Wonderful. Congratulations.
Oh, thanks. I mean, it was great. It was great for me. Obviously, it's a big, it's a career high to win a Pulitzer Prize. Something you dream would never happen, really. But also it's good for the story of Sudan. For bringing international attention. Because the thing that's striking about the war in Sudan is that even though it has created the world's biggest humanitarian crisis, on a scale that you cannot imagine, the numbers of people displaced and killed and starving.
Is it also this
but
award?
It's not getting any international attention, or very little.
So who has the right in Sudan?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, there's just not a lot of accountability for anything that happens in Sudan. I mean, remember, this is the country where there was a genocide 20 years ago in Darfur. The International Criminal Court brought charges against the president of Sudan at the time, Omar Bashir. They brought charges against numerous military commanders. And so for just a single person has stood trial at The Hague for what happened 20 years ago. So, people are right to be cynical about whether there can be any justice now. But I think that at the moment, for many Sudanese, if you were to ask them, people are just so desperate for the fighting to stop. That's the first step for any Sudanese at this stage, that they need this to stop. the fighting to stop, and secondly to move towards rebuilding their country in a way, and you know, for many Sudanese civilians to continue the revolution that started in 2019. But the truth of the matter is, at the moment, is that there's very little international focus on this conflict, and that these foreign powers, particularly the UAE in supporting the RSF, you know, appear to be acting with impunity despite all the evidence that comes to light. They don't appear to be showing any signs of changing course, and in fact just continue to deny that they're doing it, even that they're supporting the RSF. And you know, I think if you were to speak privately with people from the Emirates, they'd say, "Why are you picking on us? What about the, you know, people who are supporting the other side, the Russians or the Iranians who are supporting the Sudanese military?" And it's certainly true, you know, and Sudanese military has also carried out a lot of atrocities in this conflict. But, you know, I think there is a special focus on the RSF, the group that the Emiratis are supporting, because they have just been really extraordinarily brutal in in the areas that they control, in not just in carrying out massacres on an ethnic basis, but also in sexual violence against women. It's a huge problem, and in, you know, the suffering for ordinary Sudanese that this conflict has brought. So, you know, and I think it probably is true that if there weren't foreign powers who are pumping in money and weapons and other resources into this conflict, trying to back a winner, you know, the Sudanese have made it clear, I think, they want to choose their own government by voting. They don't want to have a government that comes from the gun. You know, and unfortunately at the moment these are people using the gun to fight for power
because they're all corrupted.
This is it's, you know, it started out as a struggle for power, and in many ways that's still what it is. You know, so you know, I think during the revolution, at least a good proportion of Sudanese society made it clear that they wanted a different future, and instead they're just going back to the past. You know, and that's the tragedy of this war. And that's the challenge about trying to end it in a way that's not going to lead to another dictatorship or authoritarian rule, that is going to point the country towards a future where people can choose their own government by voting, not by shooting.
Wow. And do you think there is a hope for Sudan, or a hope just a word, you know, to reduce the pain?
I mean, look, you know, you've got to hope. What are you going to do? What's the opposite of hope? What's the alternative to hope? The alternative to hope is despair, and that doesn't bring you anywhere. So I think people have a right to hope, and they need to hope. But, you know, there have been times in this war when it's been extremely hard to do that. I mean, one of the worst moments in the war was just last November, when, you know, October, November, when the city of Al Fasher, which had been besieged for 18 months, you know, was overrun by the RSF. And hundreds of thousands of people were forced to flee. People were being hunted down in the desert. Civilians were being hunted down as they tried to run away. There were these massacres in which, you know, in some cases, hundreds of people were killed. And, you know, just an unimaginably brutal episode that passed by. And it's really, you know, whatever your politics or who in Sudan you support or don't support, I mean, it's just extremely hard to justify that kind of behavior. You know?
Wow. Do you teach your kids about Sudan? What do you teach them about Sudan?
No,
food, art, culture.
Yes, all the good things.
Yeah,
and they're learning Arabic. Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I mean, they already speak better Arabic than me, which is something I need to change. I need to start learning again, because I can't have my kids speaking language I don't understand.
What is the common word they use it about? Habibi?
You know what? No, it's in common with a lot of kids who have a second or third language.
Yeah.
They understand a lot, but they refuse to speak it. It's very frustrating to their mother. So they take lessons, and I know that they understand a lot. You know?
That's good.
Yeah.
That's
so
good. If they understand, they can also in the future.
They can turn it in the future.
Yeah. Of course. You have this fantastic book you wrote in Pakistan about
The 9 Lives of Pakistan.
Yes, this is a great book. You like to tell the truth, and you know, as you have responsibility in your job, and you like to tell the truth. And every country you go, it's end very bad, right? In Pakistan, did you have? I mean, in Egypt. Sorry, but in Pakistan, I mean, it ended. Okay, can you go to Pakistan or no?
Not exactly.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, that is sad. I really wish I could go back to Pakistan. No, I've been in Pakistan for 9 years, And then there was an election in 2013 in May, I think. And unfortunately, a couple of days before the voting took place, a group of people came to my house at midnight, an intelligence officer and a bunch of policemen, and they handed me a letter saying that I had 72 hours to leave the country. Yeah.
That's good. They told you. That's amazing. You are lucky.
Well, they told me I had 72 hours. So then, you know, initially I thought I was going to be able to get this order overturned because I'd been there so long that I knew a lot of people, and I thought that if I reach out to my contacts, we're going to get out of this problem. But after about 24 hours, I got a message from a close friend of mine who'd been in touch with someone senior in the military. And he said, no, this time you're not going to get away with this and you have to leave.
I'm sorry.
So, but then the day after that, because there was an election going on, I still had some time left on the clock, if you like. So I drove from Islamabad, where I lived, the capital, down to Lahore, which is the biggest city in Punjab. And it was sort of the center of the election drama that was taking place that year. There was Imran Khan was running against Nawaz Sharif, and it was a very exciting election, and I thought, well, I've got, I think at this point 36 hours left, and I said I want to cover this election before I leave. That's my job. Yeah. So I went down to Lahore and started to cover the election. I went to several polling stations and I met the voters and so on. And then, but then as I was driving from one polling station to another, this military vehicle came alongside and pushed us off the road, and then some intelligence guys got out and they said to me, basically they said, when we gave you 72 hours to leave, we didn't intend that you keep reporting. And then they took me and they arrested me and detained me, and they brought me to a hotel and kept me in that hotel until 3 o'clock the next morning, when they drove me to the airport and then forced me to get in the plane. Yeah. So anyway.
But you kind of also, you are lucky because you are European. Imagine if you are a Pakistani journalist.
100%, absolutely.
I mean, but today also Europeans are not protected in the United States, especially with the Trump policy. Journalists are not protected. You are, before it could be, you are,
that was the lesson I learned in Egypt, some years later when I ran into trouble over this Regeni thing. And then that was, I think 2017 or 2018, so it was during the first Trump term. And at that point we were starting to see that these kind of, press protections that a lot of us had taken for granted, frankly, working for an American paper, were being eroded because, as I said, in this moment of difficulty, I'd reached out to some US officials in Cairo, and, they just weren't super helpful. And that was, obviously a cue that they were taking from their own government. Wow. So already at that point, we saw that things were starting to slide. And of course, compared to how things are now, where you've got the President of the United States routinely berating journalists or attacking them, not standing up for journalists. It's really, that's not only a problem for journalists in America, but it sends a signal around the world to other leaders that this is acceptable behavior, I think.
Right. And Trump, he used this, I like you, and then I answer your question, I don't like you, when
exactly.
somebody asked him in the White House.
Exactly.
I remember this Iraqi guy, he threw the shoe as a journalist.
Oh yeah, famous guy.
Yeah. What do you think about this guy? He threw the shoe to he went to the jail for 2 years, right? That guy. But, they tortured him and,
Yeah, he paid a huge price. I mean,
because he wanted to tell the truth.
I'm always, really struck and sometimes impressed by how, people are willing to throw caution to the wind and take these enormous risks just to express themselves. Thank you so much.
With a pleasure. Let me do the mustache. You know what the Spanish they say? Kiss without a mustache is like an egg without salt.
I didn't know that. You should ask my wife.
Thank you, Declan.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I wish for the peace for Sudan, and I love this country, and we wish the peace for Sudan. You look very handsome. Now you will your
Inshallah.
wife, she will never divorce you. I guarantee you have forever.
I think I'm going to have to work harder than that, but thanks.
I love you. I love you.
My man, my man.
Thank you.
My man.
Thank you.